Heiner Steckel has come a long way to be here today. He was the co-founder of the North German Institute in 1978 and was a member of the first training group there. I had the privilege of attending several of those sessions. He became a faculty member in 1990 and since has been a coordinating trainer for groups in Germany, Brazil, France, and Norway, with a group planned for Poland. In 1994, Lowen asked Heiner to be his assistant at the Evolution of Psychotherapy Conference in Hamburg, Germany. And this unique relationship with Al was repeated at the Evolution conferences in Las Vegas and Bremen and Anaheim during subsequent years until the year 2000. Heiner resides in Thedinghausen, Germany.
Well, this is a very special moment for me. Is this okay? Closer? Okay. So first, thank you for the invitation and the chance to talk here. I have to ask you for your tolerance because my English is not that fluent. I do my best, but I don't have my speech edited. So I wanted to say it in my own words, what I have to say. To be able to feel your feelings, to express them, and to be able to contain was a triad Al claimed for a solid body-based identity, and that is what his work was about. Let me see if I will be able to balance the three in the next 15 minutes, talking about a man who was so important to me. I met Al Lowen first in 1976, like Leslie, attending a workshop he gave in Germany. I was 23 years old, still in university. He was at the age of 66, where people usually retire in Germany. And here was the old man, considering my age, who seemed to be more alive and vital than myself. I was a young intellectual, and I wanted to lose my head, as we said in those days. So I met Al Lowen, and he could help me and others to have significant experiences of contacting our deep biologically based resources. I didn't use these words in those days, but I do now. In that workshop, he certainly helped me to lose my head for some moments, my head as a controlling, emotion-inhibiting instance. Okay. But on the same hand, this man was functioning absolutely superb in his head. And he could explain all the time what he was doing and why. And more important, could help me and others experience and understand ourselves deeper. This is what I was really looking for. This is what I wanted for myself. This is what I wanted to learn. And he was the man I wanted to learn from. Between this first encounter and my last visit in Buchanan in December 2006, spreads out a period of 30 years where I saw Al regularly in many individual sessions, workshops, and later traveling with him when he had asked me to help him at international conferences, as Virginia mentioned before. We saw today the video from the Hamburg conference. And I remember myself sitting in the front row, as we say, keeping my fingers crossed for him and bioenergetics. And I remember waking up in the morning by these dull rhythmic beats when Al was kicking in the hotel room next door. And every evening, I had to get the stool back to his room so he could use it in the morning. He practiced what he was suggesting to others. Unforgettable moments when we later met in the morning doing exercises together and talking the presentations over. I learned so much, and it was just great to be with him. When I was concerned how the presentations would come across to the public, he once in a while turned to me, raising his voice, or as someone said here, even barking at me. Heiner, that's your problem. You're still too concerned what people think about you. And as he got older, he was more open to feedback and even suggestions. Let me share some anecdotes with you from these 30 years, which are more than anecdotes for me. Strawberries and egos. In '84, when he visited our institute for the first time, we invited him to dinner, to the best restaurant in town, certainly. We wanted to give him the best, ordering fresh strawberries. It was early spring, so no local strawberries available, but it was the most expensive and most special dessert for the most special man. And here was his way to appreciate this. How could you order strawberries? No taste, only water, just expensive. This was my first and not the last lesson in what he meant by his concept of ego values and body values, and it showed something very typical for him. He was not, at least not very often, what you may call socially polite, but true to himself and straightforward. I remember moments when this was not easy to digest, but I started to appreciate and even love it more and more. I could trust his presence. His no was a no, and his yes was a yes. I want to share two therapeutic moments. I remember one session I was in the bridge position, and if you look at my body, you can imagine this is not the easiest one for me. When the phone rang and Al attended it, he came back and I had left the stressed position. Why did you stop the exercise? And I, well, you left the room. And he, do you do this exercise for me or for yourself? Another moment, here I was on the stool and my chest wasn't breathing too much, wasn't moving too much. He looked at me and said, you need to cry. And me, I know. So why don't you cry then to whom you don't want to show your tears? And here was the experienced, analyzed patient to my mother. Al, I don't see your mother here in this room, and I'm asking myself how long you want to bring her here in order not to be alive. He did relate, and he understood transference. More than that, he deeply understood how relational experiences of our childhood left the marks in our physiology, shaped our body, and ruled and ruined our relationships here and now, or can rule and ruin our relationships here and now, becoming the base for negative self-concepts, repetition patterns, and transferential hang-ups. As he liked to say, that the protective castle of the child turns into the prison of the adult. I always like this very simple resume of character. I knew the theory, and I'm so grateful, having experienced Al Lowen many times, relating to me and others from his deep faith in the biological resources of the human animal. Relating to me and others from his deep understanding of the vulnerable human animal, the wounded animal. and relating to me and others from his deep conviction in life and passion for life, and his trust in the energetic processes with which we can restore our bodily self and heal, to reconnect the disconnected. You must find and reconnect to your animal nature to be fully human was his credo, I heard many times. And for him, this was at the core of humanity. And for me, this is at the core of my bioenergetic understanding and practice. An anecdote about differentiation. As part of my trainer's exam, I did a presentation at the IABA conference, and I guess some of my trainer colleagues had been present at this event. I don't know if you remember. I presented on the topic of how the therapist can use his body to get the patient on his feet. Developmental aspects of grounding and theory and practice. Part of my presentation was to demonstrate some techniques with a volunteer from the audience. A way of working which wasn't Al's style at all. He was present, and during the discussion he asked me about my understanding of the sexual and Oedipal issue of the female patient. This hasn't been the theme. But from my general body reading and doing this, by that time already was kind of incorporated in me, so I did it kind of all the time. I could say something, and he agreed, but he wanted to have it more specific. The audience, who had been pleased with my work, got a bit nervous, because this went on several times. I had an answer, and he said, yes, but more specific. And I don't remember how many times, 3, 4 times, yes, but more specific. And so I finally said that I couldn't tell more without exploring the issue more. And I guess I said, and by the way, I'm not that quick in body analysis, reading the body, than you. That's it. I said I cannot go more into details without fantasizing, so I have to invent something. That's all what I can say, which is based on something I see or perceive. So I was honest. Leaving the room, there was a strong clap on my back. He passed by with a big smile, saying, I couldn't have said it more specifically, but you have to look for it. And later he even sent me patients because he felt the person would benefit from some working on horizontal grounding, because this was a certain sequence I demonstrated in the different developmental stages, with a lot of body contact which was not at all his style. So I never had a major disagreement with him. Luckily, I never had a major disagreement with him, because I saw many colleagues suffering from this when the warrior came up, as this was mentioned today in some of the talks. So I never had a major disagreement with him. So I was challenged, but all the time respected in my differentiations. And I agree with what was said before, and Ed Swaster mentioned it. Whenever I talk to him saying something from my point of view, I see this and this, and it may be a little different from how he saw it. We could have entered into a strong discussion, but it was always respectful and honoring a different perspective. You should never begin a discussion with him with the words, "Don't you think?" This was bringing the warrior up immediately. Don't you think that it's not good to work with a borderline patient on the stool? So the answer would be, yes, for you not, because you don't know to work with the stool. if you would have shared your experience, that by your experience and by your way of working with this tool, he may shake his head and said, well, you may improve a little on the technique with the stool, but that's okay if you find your way. But not with don't you think so. So if you wanted to get his, approval for a different point of view, this was already almost the end of the discussion, or you were having a real war. He was there for me in moments of professional and personal doubts. He was there for me when I made faults, got in trouble because of myself, and he helped me to look at it and grow from it and with it. I would not be true to myself and to my relationship to Al, not to mention the difficult moments I was with him, the difficult moments for him, when he suffered from, as he perceived it, the disrespect he felt from his own school, when he witnessed a movement away from what he considered the center and the base of bioenergetic work. Interestingly, he himself had the courage to question the characterology he had developed as being over-systematized and in danger of being misused to categorize people instead of being seen as a tool for deeper understanding of the individual's dynamic. I remember that we had this discussion in the first trainers meeting I attended in 1990 in Lisbon, and I was strongly against this. He wanted to take the teaching of character out of the curriculum. I said, oh my God, here I am entering the faculty, and one of the, I would say, cornerstones of our theory is taken away. So I think, no, I think it's more the question not to stay with the, I don't know the English word, the tones, you know, where you build the melody from. But I understood his concern and I shared his concern, but it would be not the right consequence for me. And thanks, we didn't do it. And he stepped back from this idea. Now, in these days, the older he got, the more he moved towards pure energetic work. This was interesting, certainly different, but somehow alike the old Reich. At the same time, many colleagues in the Institute and the school in itself felt the need to integrate more a psychodynamic point of view. This was not an easy moat to bridge, not an easy gap to bridge. Probably also because of personal issues involved on both sides. Maybe mainly because of personal issues involved on both sides. And it certainly became a wound to him, not easy to heal. I witnessed that Al could see and own his part in it. In many private conversations, he could say, I have my part in this. I don't want to go in more details, but he could see this. It was not so easy for him to express this openly, and maybe not so easy for him to express this to certain people, where the warrior had already come up and the war was already in process from both sides. At certain moments, he regretted that he had founded the school and organization, and other colleagues have mentioned this, and I strongly opposed, because I wouldn't be here today if there hadn't been a school. But he sure paid a price, personally, because he never considered himself an organizational person. I wish for us who are engaged in this school that in our maturation and differentiation process as colleagues, we can stay deeply connected to the roots and honoring them, no matter on which branches of the bioenergetic tree we belong or we may want to develop. Let me end with having a look at a very concrete material part of the legacy. I look to his writings, and from many things we can make, I look to his writings as something where from many things we can make a seamless connection, a direct connection to the findings of modern neurobiology, emotion and trauma research. Besides this, he had the gift to write in a way that reaches people, touches human bodies, and becomes personally very meaningful for many of them. Working with bioenergetics brought me to a dozen countries. Everywhere I experienced that people got excited about bioenergetics by reading the books, and professionals were stimulated to join the training. It's amazing that a couple of weeks ago, we had a new student, a 56-year-old doctor, coming to our training group in Germany. He had heard something about bioenergetics, but he didn't really know about bioenergetics, and somehow he got a book from Al. There are only 2 books in Germany in German language available at this moment. Most of them are, sad enough, out of print. He looked at the book and they said, well, that's what I'm looking for, and he called the training institute. And I have this experience in many countries, and the new group you mentioned in Poland, people, the one who was organizing this came to the same interest in bioenergetics by reading Al's books. I personally look into the books again and again, finding them stimulating, enriching, and convincing. When I travel, I carry one with me, and I carry a lot of video material to teach from. This heritage is a treasure, a gold mine which has not yet been fully explored or exploited, if you want to use the term for the gold mine. A famous German neurobiologist said recently, and this is a neurobiologist, movement is doping for the brain. It promotes connectivity. It promotes the ability to relate. Only when you have a relation to your own body, you can win relations to other people again. And he says this based on the most up-to-date scientific knowledge. Alone trusted that we can take care of ourselves when we reconnect and refer to our organismic being, and by this to the self-healing forces and capacities. This for me is at the core of Al's legacy. It's at the core of my bioenergetic understanding and practice. Al loved Greece, and I have wonderful memories to the Greek workshops. Where's Anna Miller? She's there someplace. He loved Greek wine, metaxa, the music and the dance. And the last very special dance we had, and I think it was this, Leslie was present on this day, was when I was sitting next to him when he already had this severe stroke, the same experience Ed had. It was actually the last time I saw him. And Monica and Fred put on Greek music. And here was all the vitality and the joy again in his face, and with some rhythm and movements which were still possible. Al, I miss you, and I miss you with all I have mentioned and more. And I'm happy and thankful for the connection we had and to feel you so present in me and my work. Thank you.